once again, add layer, we go to our data source, which is desktop, files, and we're going to want to look at our nodes. Once again, our SRS WGS84, and now we have our weighted Weibo nodes. And so, of course, do the check. We want to make sure that all our weights are set to integer, so highlighted in green, and nice enough. Once again, we have our domain, min-max 2 to 19. Call this Weibo nodes, and then we're just going to copy this over. Alright. So looking at our QGIS map, it's nice that we have this choropleth. You know, it identifies the information and gives it some legible quality that links it to its data. So we're, in a sense, going to try to just revisualize this in TileMill in a somewhat similar fashion. And a way to do this is by creating, once again, a hierarchy. So already we see, you know, it has this default stylizing with our marker widths, our fills. And what we want to do is start identifying the information within our attributes using the weights to denote the color, the opacity, and the size of each of those bubbles. So already we saw that our domain was 2 to 19, and then also looking from our QGIS example, we have this choropleth already set up. It's works quite well for our purposes, and we see, you know, it's from 2 to 5, 5 to 8 roughly, 8 to 12, and we can use this information to bring into TileMill and define our parameters. So similar to what we did with the roads, we want to identify the parameter that we want to weight this information off of. So using weight, which is the field, we're going to say if it's less than or equal to 19, we're going to have our marker width as 30, and then we're going to close it out. And then we're going to want to repeat this 5 times, similar to the fashion that we see it in QGIS. Each giving one its own weight. So we're going to say from 15.6, I'm using the same numbers that we had in our previous example, less than or equal to 12.2. Let me say this is going to be 20. Let's say 8.8. This is going to be 15. And we're going to say 5.4 is going to be 10. Once that's done, all we have to do is just save it out, and we have our weighted bubbles. So of course it's not perfect right now, especially at the zoom level, and it's not really, it's overlapping too much to give any sort of definite information, but it's already getting started in, you know, putting data to this to these nodes. So after that, we're going to want to define the colors of this. So I mean, it's pretty straightforward from here. We're basically going to be using the same kind of workflow for all these things. And also another thing to mention is that, you know, this is going to be like a perfect visualization of this example, but it's important to just, you know, start working on developing these styles and just, you know, constantly working at just making it as legible as possible. So if we want to change the colors for each of these, all you have to do is tack on with a semicolon. I'm going to make that mistake again. And then let's say for the largest bubbles, we want it to be red. So we go to our Photoshop. And now we have hashtag FA14. Then we just copy it over for this guy. We're going to want it to be, I believe the next one was orange. So looking at this, FFC000. And as fun as it is watching me switch over programs, I'm just going to fill out the rest. So let's see, hashtag.
So this should be like basically the same kind of visualization we did in QGIS. It's not anything new. You do have to translate it, and it might seem a little bit awkward at first, like that now we have to like stylize everything with code, you know, whereas QGIS gives us a nice interface. But the reason it's set up this way is this whole front end is all made with JavaScript, so it's literally going to take it and put it online as JavaScript. So that's why it's set up in code, because it actually uses that to style it online. Right? So it's not a standalone kind of program.
So you use kind of QGIS as like a tester?
Yeah.
Basically?
So QGIS lets you test things out. It lets you run processing, so all the kind of heat maps and things. This isn't a GIS tool. This is a map making tool. So if you consider a GIS as a map making tool, then this is just online GIS. But all the other stuff about processing and spatial stats, this won't do. This is just to take what you've done and make an online map.
Yeah. So now that we have our color, it's still not reading quite well. One of the things that worked quite nicely is adding a opacity to it to create sort of an inadvertent heat map. And a way to sort of get around doing that is just by changing the marker opacity, which isn't defined earlier, so you can do it right here. Also, another thing that's important is there is a bit of a hierarchy. Actually, there is not really there is no hierarchy to this, so whatever you put after this this like initial definition up here, it's going to redefine it. So just keep that in mind as you're doing this. So for this last part, it's just using the marker opacity function, and we're just going to put them all at 0.4. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Spelling is everything. All right, so already this is looking kind of better. I'm going to take off this color. I'm just going to make it white now. Let's take it from my background. All right, so we're sort of getting there and identifying this information. The next thing we want to do is bring in our vectors. So in our QGIS example, we have these vector lines that create a network between these points. And the nice thing is that it's very straightforward. These can be visualized in the same fashion. So we go to our source folder, input in at srswgs84. Now we have all this, and then separate it out. So this is going to be a little bit tedious, but with the lines, once again, in the same fashion, we're going to want to separate our weights, first looking at what they're defined as. So right now we know that it's 2 to 19 is our nodes are done. And it's also important to reference the way that it's visualized within the QGIS. So we see right now that Danielle has only identified the major weighted lines from 2 to 3 and 3 to 19. And so we're going to want to repeat this as well. So using our weight field. So we're going to say when weight equals 1, our line width is going to be 0.1, and then our line color is going to be relatively the same as what we had previously. So I'm not going to, so this is 70 FA14. Copy it out. And then have a marker opacity of 0.01. So we did want the lowest weights to be very faint. Do a quick test on this. It should have already disseminated it. All right, either way, moving on through it, we're going to copy this out 4 times. So we're going to say if it's greater than equal to 2, our width will be in the same fashion, so we're not going to want to identify it. Our color, we'll make it, let's change it here. I'm not sure why, but I'm going to have it as FFF 600. And then for being the only ones we want to define are what's greater than 3, and then, 2 to 3, and then 3 to 19. All we have to do is just use what we had before. So we're going to say if it's between 2 and 3, it's going to be orange, and 4 and greater, so 4 to 19, it's going to be red. So, and then this guy. And we're going to change our marker opacity to 0.8 and 0.5 so that these guys do identify, as well as still not overlap the point information. Oh, sorry, also changing the line widths. So this should work relatively well now. Yep. So we see that we have our heavily weighted lines from 4 to 19 is the most prominent red. Then orange and very faint we have yellow. And so once again, you can go through and mess around with all of this. For example, let's say I want the lines above my nodes. It's to change that hierarchy within layers. It's just click and drag. Yeah, so that's pretty much, I'm not going to say all you need to know about point and vector stylizing, but it's going to be the base workflow you have and giving definition to this information. Once again, if you want to add more onto it, all you have to do is look within the Carto CSS documentation.